The wallet appeared at exactly the wrong time. Or maybe the right time. Diego Martinez would spend months wondering which it was. The late summer sun hung low over the New Mexico desert, painting the highway in shades of gold and copper. Heat shimmered above the asphalt despite the approaching evening. Wind pushed dust across the road in lazy spirals. 16-year-old Diego pedaled his battered bicycle along the shoulder. The chain squeaked. The tires were nearly bald. One brake barely worked. But it got him where he needed to go. Most days. Today had been longer than usual. School. Then 4 hours helping unload deliveries at Rosie's diner. The extra money wasn't much. But every dollar mattered now. Especially now. Diego adjusted the backpack hanging from one shoulder. Inside were groceries. Bread, rice, beans, a few canned vegetables. Not much, but enough for a few days. The boy glanced toward the distant mountains. Home wasn't far, just another mile. Then he could check on his grandmother, make dinner, help her with medications, study, sleep, repeat tomorrow. Life had become a routine of responsibilities. Not because anyone forced him, because there wasn't anyone else. A sudden flash caught his eye. Something dark lay near the edge of the highway. At first he thought it was trash. The desert collected plenty of that. Fast food wrappers, old bottles, pieces of tire rubber. But something felt different. The object looked too large, too deliberate, too new. Diego slowed his bicycle, then stopped completely. The wind pushed dust across the shoulder. The object remained where it was. A wallet. Large. Black leather. Expensive looking. The teenager climbed off his bike, walked over, picked it up. Heavy. Very heavy. His first instinct was to check for identification. Maybe somebody dropped it recently. Maybe they were already looking for it. Then he opened it and froze. Completely froze. Money. A lot of money. Stack after stack of $100 bills. Neatly folded. Held together with bank straps. Diego stared. The amount looked unreal. Impossible. More money than he'd ever held in his life. Maybe more money than he'd ever seen in one place. His heart started pounding. The desert suddenly felt silent. Too silent. The only sound came from distant wind. The teenager counted quickly, then stopped, then counted again. Because surely he was mistaken. Surely there couldn't be that much cash inside a wallet. But there was. Thousands. And thousands. And thousands. His hands began shaking. The money felt heavy. Dangerously heavy. Then he found the identification card. A driver's license. A motorcycle club membership card. Several photographs. The name jumped out immediately. Rex Harrison. The photograph showed an older biker. Gray beard. Weathered face. Intense eyes. Leather vest covered with patches. The kind of man people noticed immediately. The kind of man people probably didn't want to upset. Diego swallowed hard. Everyone in red, Mason knew the name. Or at least knew the nickname. Bulldog Harrison. The Hell's Angel. The biker. The legend. The man who rode across half the country before most people finished high school. Even people who never met him knew stories. Some true. Some probably not. The reputation alone felt enormous. The teenager looked down at the cash again. Then at the highway. Then at the wallet. Then back at the money. A strange feeling settled into his stomach. Because suddenly he understood something. Nobody saw him find it. Nobody. The highway remained empty. The desert remained empty. The moment belonged entirely to him. And that made the temptation worse. Much worse. Diego slowly placed the wallet into his backpack. Then climbed back onto his bicycle. The ride home felt different. Every bump in the road felt different. Every mile felt different. Because the money wasn't just money anymore. It represented choices. Possibilities. Solutions. The kind of solutions his family desperately needed. And that scared him. The Martinez trailer sat at the edge of Red Mesa. Small. Aging. Weather-beaten. But clean. Always clean. Rosa Martinez insisted on that. The old woman believed dignity had nothing to do with money. Diego agreed. Though lately dignity seemed harder to maintain. The teenager parked his bicycle. Stepped inside. Immediately smelled medicine. The scent had become familiar. Too familiar. Grandma. Rosa appeared from the kitchen. Her smile arrived instantly. It always did. Even on difficult days. Even on painful days. Even when she clearly didn't feel well. You're late. Diego held up the grocery bag. Rosie needed help unloading supplies. The old woman nodded. Then coughed. The cough lasted longer than usual. Long enough to worry him. Again. Dinner passed quietly. Rice. Beans. Conversation. The normal routine. Yet Diego found it difficult to focus. The wallet sat hidden inside his bedroom. The money waited. The temptation waited. And every time he looked at his grandmother, the problem became harder. Because Rosa wasn't getting better. The medications helped. Sometimes. But not enough. After dinner, Diego gathered the mail. 3 envelopes sat on the kitchen counter. His stomach immediately tightened. Bills. Always bills. He didn't need to open them. He already knew. Medical bills. Utility bills. Payment notices. Warnings. The same cycle repeated every month. Only now the numbers kept growing. Later that evening, Rosa fell asleep in her chair. The television played softly. The desert night settled outside. Diego quietly entered his room. Then removed the wallet. The cash looked exactly the same. Thick. Organized. Life-changing. The teenager stared at it for several minutes. No movement. No sound. Just thoughts. Dangerous thoughts. He imagined paying the medical bills. Replacing the refrigerator. Fixing the roof leak. Buying proper school supplies. Helping his grandmother. Removing stress. Removing fear. Removing uncertainty. The money could solve almost everything. Not forever, but for a while. And right now, a while sounded incredible. A knock interrupted his thoughts. His friend Miguel stepped through the open door. The 2 teenagers had known each other since childhood. Miguel immediately noticed the wallet, then the money, then the expression on Diego's face. What is that? Diego explained. The highway, the wallet, the biker, the cash, everything. Miguel listened carefully, then looked at the money again, and laughed. Not because it was funny, because the answer seemed obvious. Keep it. Diego stared. What? Keep it. The friend shrugged. Nobody would know. The words hung in the room. Heavy. Simple. Tempting. Miguel continued. You need it. True. Your grandma needs it. Also true. The guy probably has plenty more. Maybe. People like that always do. Maybe not. Diego wasn't sure. The teenager looked down. Because every argument sounded reasonable, logical, practical, which made resisting them harder. Eventually Miguel left. The room became quiet again. The wallet remained on the bed. The cash remained inside. The decision remained unfinished. Diego barely slept that night. Every possible choice seemed wrong. Keep the money? Wrong. Return the money? Also difficult. Ignore the situation? Impossible. The teenager stared at the ceiling until dawn, searching for certainty, finding none. Then morning arrived. And with it came clarity. Not because the problem changed. Because Diego remembered something his grandmother always said. Character is what you do when nobody is watching. The words echoed inside his head. Again, and again, and again. By breakfast, the decision was made. The money wasn't his. No matter how badly he needed it. No matter how much it could help. No matter how difficult life felt. It wasn't his. And that mattered. So Diego started searching. The first stop was Rosie's diner. The second was the gas station. The third was a repair shop. Eventually someone pointed toward a motorcycle gathering scheduled outside town. The teenager listened carefully, then heard a name. Bulldog. The owner of the wallet. The Hell's Angel. The biker. The man everyone seemed slightly afraid of. Diego swallowed hard. Because suddenly returning the wallet felt a lot more intimidating. The motorcycle clubhouse sat outside Red Mesa. Far enough from town to provide privacy. Close enough to remain accessible. The building looked larger than Diego expected. Rows of motorcycles filled the parking area. Chrome glinted beneath the afternoon sun. Engines rumbled. Laughter echoed from somewhere inside. The teenager stopped his bicycle across the road and immediately questioned every decision he'd made. There had to be 50 bikers. Maybe more. Large men. Tattooed arms. Leather vests. Weathered faces. People who looked like they'd spent decades riding highways. The sight felt overwhelming. Diego considered leaving. Just leaving. Dropping the wallet somewhere. Walking away. Pretending he never found it. The temptation lasted about 5 seconds. Then disappeared. He'd come this far. Might as well finish. The teenager crossed the road. Every step felt heavier than the last. Several bikers noticed him immediately. Conversations slowed. Heads turned. Nobody looked hostile. But nobody looked friendly either. Mostly curious. A teenager walking into a biker gathering wasn't exactly common. One rider approached. Massive beard. Broad shoulders. Serious expression. Can I help you? Diego nodded nervously. I think I found something. The biker raised an eyebrow. What? Without speaking, Diego pulled out the wallet. Everything changed. Immediately, the rider's expression sharpened. Where'd you get that? Highway shoulder. The biker stared, then took a deep breath. Wait here. The man disappeared inside. The teenager suddenly felt exposed. Dozens of eyes watched. The heat felt stronger. The silence felt heavier. For a moment, Diego wondered if this had been a terrible idea. Then the clubhouse door opened. A gray-bearded biker stepped outside. Slowly, purposefully, exactly like the driver's license photograph. Bulldog Harrison, the owner of the wallet. The man everyone knew. The man everyone respected. Bulldog stopped a few feet away. His expression revealed nothing. The biker simply extended his hand. Diego handed over the wallet. The older man opened it, looked inside, then looked again, then a third time. The cash remained untouched. Every bill, every dollar, exactly where it belonged. The surrounding bikers fell silent, because they understood what that meant. The teenager could have taken everything. Nobody would have known. Nobody would have stopped him. Yet he hadn't touched a dollar. Not one. Bulldog slowly closed the wallet, then studied Diego carefully. Longer than necessary. Long enough to make the teenager uncomfortable. Finally he spoke. Only 5 words. 5 simple words. Yet the question stopped everyone cold. Why didn't you keep it? And suddenly 50 bikers waited for the answer. The question hung in the air. 50 bikers. A silent parking lot. The desert wind moving dust across the ground. And one teenager standing in front of a man whose wallet contained more money than Diego had ever seen in his life. Bulldog Harrison stared at him, waiting. Everyone else waited too. Why didn't you keep it? Diego swallowed. The answer seemed obvious to him. Yet judging by the expressions around him, it wasn't obvious to anyone else. The teenager looked down briefly, then met Bulldog's eyes. Because it wasn't mine. Silence. Absolute silence. A few bikers exchanged glances. Bulldog didn't react. Not immediately. He simply continued studying the boy, as though trying to determine whether the answer was genuine or rehearsed. Diego continued quietly. My grandmother always says if you start stealing from people, eventually you start stealing from yourself. A few eyebrows lifted. The old biker remained silent. The teenager shifted uncomfortably. I don't know if that makes sense. It does. Bulldog's voice surprised him. Deep, calm, unexpectedly thoughtful. The older man nodded slowly. It makes a lot of sense. Several bikers moved closer. Not threateningly. Curiously. One finally spoke. You didn't take any of it? Diego shook his head. No. Not even one bill. No. Another rider laughed softly. Kid, there was enough money in there to buy a decent used truck. The teenager shrugged. The comment only reinforced his point. It still wasn't mine. Bulldog looked away for a moment. Toward the desert. Toward distant mountains. Toward something only he could see. The expression on his face changed slightly. Not much, but enough. Because suddenly the wallet didn't seem important anymore. The boy did. The older biker slipped the wallet into his vest, then surprised everyone, including Diego. Have you eaten? The teenager blinked. What? Lunch. Bulldog nodded toward the clubhouse. Have you eaten? The question felt so unexpected that Diego didn't immediately answer. One of the bikers laughed. That's biker language for yes. More laughter followed. The tension disappeared instantly. 30 minutes later, Diego sat inside the clubhouse eating a cheeseburger larger than anything Rosie's Diner served. The situation still felt unreal. The room contained motorcycle memorabilia, military flags, photographs, trophies, memories, decades of memories. And somehow he was sitting among them, listening to stories, answering questions, trying not to feel completely out of place. Bulldog sat across from him, mostly listening, occasionally asking questions. The conversation eventually shifted toward family, school, life. Nothing dramatic, just ordinary conversation. Then Bulldog asked about his parents. The atmosphere changed immediately. Diego noticed. So did everyone else. My dad died when I was little. The biker nodded. And your mom? The teenager looked down. Haven't seen her in years. Nobody pushed further. Nobody needed to. The answer said enough. Bulldog quietly leaned back. Something about the boy felt familiar. Not his appearance. Not his background. His resilience. The quiet determination. The refusal to complain. The old biker had seen that before. Years ago. In people who survived difficult lives. Eventually Diego stood, ready to leave. The wallet had been returned. The mission was finished. But Bulldog stopped him. Hold on. The older biker reached into his pocket, pulled out several $100 bills, and extended them. The teenager immediately stepped back. No. Bulldog frowned. It's a reward. No. The answer came faster. Stronger. The room became silent again. Why not? Diego shook his head. I didn't return it for money. The statement stunned everyone. The biker stared, then slowly smiled. A genuine smile this time. Not amusement. Respect. The kind of respect that can't be purchased. Only earned. Bulldog returned the cash to his pocket, then nodded once. Fair enough. As Diego rode home on his bicycle, he couldn't stop thinking about the encounter. The bikers weren't what he expected. Neither was Bulldog. The stories people told never mentioned the kindness, the patience, the respect. Only the image. Only the reputation. And suddenly Diego wondered how many other things in life people misunderstood. 3 days later, Bulldog visited the Martinez trailer. The visit surprised everyone, especially Rosa. The elderly woman nearly dropped her coffee when she opened the door and found a gray-bearded biker standing outside. Bulldog removed his sunglasses, smiled politely. "Ma'am." Rosa blinked, then glanced toward Diego, then back toward Bulldog, then back toward Diego. The entire situation looked ridiculous, which somehow made it easier. Within 20 minutes, they sat around the kitchen table drinking coffee. The conversation flowed naturally. Rosa had that effect on people. The elderly woman possessed a gift for making strangers comfortable, even intimidating strangers. Bulldog found himself talking more than usual, something that rarely happened. Then he noticed the envelope. Folded, worn, partially hidden beneath a stack of newspapers. The word printed across the front caught his attention. Notice. The biker frowned slightly. Not because of the envelope itself, because of Diego's reaction. The teenager immediately looked away. Too quickly. Years of experience taught Bulldog something important. People reveal problems without speaking. The boy's expression revealed one now. The biker didn't ask immediately. Instead, he waited, observed, listened. The opportunity arrived 15 minutes later, when Rosa stepped into another room. Bulldog nodded toward the envelope. "What's that?" Diego hesitated, long enough to answer the question without words. The older biker's expression darkened. "What kind of notice?" The teenager sighed, then finally admitted it. "Eviction." The word hit harder than expected. Bulldog stared. "Eviction." Diego nodded. The explanation came quietly. The trailer sat on land owned by a development company. For years, everything remained stable. Then ownership changed. New management arrived. New plans emerged. New prices appeared. People started losing homes, one family at a time. The biker listened carefully. The story grew worse with every detail. Increased rents, pressure tactics, aggressive offers, threats disguised as business decisions. The pattern felt familiar. Too familiar. Bulldog had seen versions of it across the country. Wealthy people convincing vulnerable people to leave. Legally, technically, coldly. Who's behind it? Diego answered immediately. Calvin Drake. The name meant nothing to him. At first. Then another biker called that evening. And everything changed. Bulldog sat outside the clubhouse listening to details. The conversation lasted nearly an hour. When it ended, the old biker looked troubled. Very troubled. Because Calvin Drake wasn't simply a developer. The man had a reputation. A growing one. Entire communities seemed to suffer after he arrived. Property disputes. Questionable transactions. Unusual zoning changes. Coincidences. Too many coincidences. The following week, Bulldog started asking questions. Quiet questions. The best kind. Questions directed toward people who remembered things. Former county employees. Retired surveyors. Local business owners. Veterans. People often overlooked. The answers arrived slowly. But they arrived. And the picture they painted wasn't pretty. Meanwhile, Diego focused on helping Rosa. Life continued. School. Work. Bills. Responsibilities. The normal routine. Yet something felt different. The teenager sensed movement beneath the surface. Like pieces shifting into place. Like a storm forming beyond the horizon. He wasn't wrong. Because while he worried about eviction notices, Bulldog was uncovering something much larger. The first major clue came from an old records office. A forgotten building near the edge of town. Dusty shelves. Aging documents. Boxes nobody opened in years. The kind of place powerful people assume nobody visits. Bulldog arrived with 2 other bikers. Not because they expected trouble. Because paperwork is easier with extra hands. The search lasted hours. Property maps. Ownership transfers. Tax records. Survey documents. Nothing seemed unusual at first. Then one file changed everything. A land transfer. Small. Ordinary. Unremarkable. Until they compared signatures. The dates didn't match. The handwriting didn't match. Nothing matched. The document looked legitimate. Until someone actually examined it. Then the problems became obvious. More files followed. Then more. Then more. A pattern emerged. Properties changing ownership under strange circumstances. Residents pressured into selling. Paperwork inconsistencies. Missing pages. Missing records. Missing explanations. The evidence wasn't definitive yet, but it pointed somewhere. And that somewhere led directly toward Calvin Drake. Bulldog contacted a retired county clerk. The woman reviewed everything carefully, then looked up. Her expression said enough. This isn't right. The biker nodded. No. The clerk examined additional files, one after another. Each discovery deepened her concern. Eventually, she pushed back from the table. Somebody's been manipulating records. That statement changed everything, because now it wasn't just suspicion. Now it involved documentation, evidence, proof. The kind of proof investigators pay attention to. The kind of proof newspapers print. The kind of proof powerful people fear. News spread quietly, then less quietly. Whispers became conversations. Conversations became meetings. Meetings became action. Former residents began speaking up. Business owners came forward. Retired officials shared concerns. The silence surrounding Calvin Drake started cracking. The pressure increased rapidly. Too rapidly. Someone noticed. Because 3 nights later the records office was broken into. Fortunately, the important files were already copied. But the message felt obvious. Very obvious. Someone was nervous. Bulldog stood outside the damaged building after midnight. Police lights reflected across nearby windows. The desert wind moved through empty streets. The biker folded his arms, then smiled slightly. Not because the situation amused him, because it confirmed everything. People don't try destroying records unless those records matter. The following morning, another surprise arrived. Motorcycles. Lots of motorcycles. Not hundreds. Not yet. Just a handful. Then another handful. Then more. Old friends. Chapter members. Veterans. Riders. People hearing rumors. People responding. People arriving. By sunset, the clubhouse parking lot looked noticeably fuller. Bulldog watched the arrivals, then looked toward the horizon. A slow smile crossed his face, because he recognized exactly what was happening. The word was spreading. The Brotherhood was paying attention. And if history taught him anything, it was this. Once bikers start showing up for a cause they believe in, they're rarely the last ones to arrive. Far from it. The motorcycles started arriving before sunrise. At first, nobody paid attention. A pair of riders stopped for coffee at Rosie's Diner. Then 3 more parked beside the gas station. A few others rolled into town shortly after. Nothing unusual. Red Mesa saw travelers all the time, especially during riding season. But by noon, people started noticing something strange. The motorcycles weren't leaving. They kept coming. Bulldog stood outside the clubhouse watching the highway. The old biker knew exactly what was happening. Word had spread. Not through newspapers. Not through television. Through riders. One phone call became 10. 10 became 50. 50 became hundreds. The Brotherhood worked that way. Always had. A rider needed help. A family faced injustice. A veteran was being mistreated. People showed up. Simple as that. Diego watched from the edge of the parking lot. The sight felt impossible. Motorcycles arrived from Texas, Arizona, Colorado, Nevada, Oklahoma, California. Every license plate seemed different. Every rider carried a different story. Yet somehow they all arrived for the same reason. The teenager struggled to understand it. Why? Bulldog smiled. Because somebody has to. The old biker pointed toward the highway. Another convoy appeared. Dozens of motorcycles. Chrome flashing beneath the desert sun. Engines rumbling across the valley. The sound echoed off distant mesas. People emerged from stores. From homes. From restaurants. The entire town started watching. Because nobody had ever seen anything like it. Meanwhile, Calvin Drake watched from his office window. The wealthy developer didn't like surprises. And this definitely qualified as one. The motorcycles bothered him. The investigations bothered him. The growing attention bothered him. Most of all, the loss of control bothered him. For years, people simply accepted his decisions. Now they questioned them. That change frightened him, more than he admitted. By the second day, local media arrived. Then regional media. Then national motorcycle magazines. The story spread quickly. A teenager returns thousands of dollars. Discovers corruption. A biker brotherhood rallies behind a struggling community. People loved stories like that, especially because they were real. Diego hated the attention. The teenager preferred fixing bicycles, helping his grandmother, living quietly. Now reporters wanted interviews, photographs, statements, questions. The entire situation felt overwhelming. Fortunately, Rosa handled it better. Much better. The elderly woman remained calm. Always calm. One reporter asked whether she was surprised by everything happening. Rosa smiled. Not really. The reporter blinked. Why not? The old woman glanced toward Diego. Because good people eventually find each other. The answer appeared in newspapers across 3 states, and somehow perfectly summarized the entire situation. By Friday evening, the count crossed 200 riders. The next morning, it crossed 300. Exactly 300. The largest gathering Red Mesa had ever witnessed. Families lined sidewalks. Children waved. Veterans appeared wearing old service caps. Business owners offered discounts. The atmosphere felt more like a celebration than a confrontation, which surprised everyone, especially outsiders. Then Sheriff Morales made an announcement. A public hearing. Open records. Open testimony. Open evidence. Everything would be presented publicly. The town exploded with anticipation. And suddenly everybody knew where they'd be on Tuesday. The town square filled before sunrise. Rows of folding chairs stretched across Main Street. Flags moved gently in the morning breeze. News cameras occupied every corner. 300 motorcycles lined surrounding streets. The atmosphere felt electric. History was about to happen. Diego sat beside Rosa near the front. The teenager looked nervous. The elderly woman looked calm. As usual, Bulldog stood nearby talking with veterans and community leaders. The old biker seemed relaxed. But people who knew him understood better. He was focused. Very focused. The hearing began shortly after 9. Evidence appeared first. Documents, property records, financial statements, land transfers, maps, photographs. The crowd listened carefully. Every presentation revealed something new, and almost every revelation pointed toward the same conclusion. People had been manipulated. Families had been pressured. Records had been altered. Trust had been abused. Former county employees testified. Retired clerks testified. Property owners testified. One witness after another stepped forward. The pattern became impossible to ignore. Coincidences stopped looking like coincidences. Mistakes stopped looking like mistakes. The truth emerged piece by piece. Slowly, relentlessly, publicly. Calvin Drake sat near the front. His confidence disappeared hour by hour. The polished smile vanished first. Then the certainty. Then the arrogance. The developer spent years believing influence could solve everything. Now influence looked very small. Because facts occupied the stage. And facts are difficult to negotiate with. By midday, the crowd reached standing room only. People packed sidewalks. Businesses closed temporarily. Entire families attended. No one wanted to miss what happened next. Because everyone sensed the town was changing. Right there. In real time. Then Sheriff Morales approached the microphone. The square immediately quieted. The lawman cleared his throat. Looked across the audience. Then made a surprising announcement. There is one final witness. The crowd exchanged curious glances. Even Bulldog looked interested. Because he hadn't expected additional testimony. The sheriff looked directly toward Diego. The teenager's stomach dropped. No, absolutely not. He wasn't prepared. He wasn't a public speaker. He wasn't important. Yet the sheriff smiled and motioned toward the stage. The crowd started applauding. Diego froze. Completely froze. Then Rosa squeezed his hand. The gesture said everything. You can do this. The teenager slowly stood. 300 riders watched. Hundreds of residents watched. Reporters watched. The entire town watched. And somehow Diego found himself walking toward the microphone. At first he couldn't speak. Not because he lacked words. Because too many words existed. The crowd waited patiently. Nobody rushed him. Nobody pressured him. They simply waited. Eventually Diego looked toward Rosa. Then toward Bulldog. Then toward the people filling the square. The nervousness eased slightly. Not completely. Just enough. The teenager took a breath. And started talking. He spoke about honesty. Not dramatically. Simply. Honestly. He described finding the wallet. The temptation. The struggle. The decision. Nothing complicated. Yet people listened like every word mattered. Because it did. Then Diego said something nobody expected. If I kept the money, maybe my life would have gotten easier. The crowd remained silent. The teenager continued. But I don't think I'd like the person I became. The statement landed harder than anyone expected. Even reporters stopped writing. Because sometimes simple truths carry enormous weight. Then he talked about Rosa. The sacrifices. The struggles. The lessons. Everything she taught him. The elderly woman wiped tears from her eyes. Several others did too. Including a few bikers who would never admit it later. When Diego finished speaking, nobody moved. For several seconds, complete silence covered the square. Then one person stood. A veteran. Then another. Then another. Soon hundreds of people were standing, applauding, cheering, celebrating. The ovation lasted nearly 2 full minutes. The teenager stepped away from the microphone. Certain the day was finished. It wasn't. Not even close. Because Bulldog suddenly walked onto the stage carrying a large envelope. The crowd immediately became curious. The old biker smiled, then handed it to Diego. The teenager opened it slowly. Confusion appeared first, then shock, then complete disbelief. Inside sat scholarship documents. A full engineering scholarship. Tuition, books, housing assistance. Everything covered. Every single thing. The crowd erupted. Rosa covered her face. Bulldog simply smiled. The scholarship wasn't his idea alone. 300 riders contributed. Local businesses contributed. Veterans contributed. People from across the region contributed. Together, they created opportunity. Together, they changed a future. The surprises weren't over. Not yet. Bulldog raised his hand. The crowd gradually quieted. Then he pointed toward the old Veterans Center near the edge of town. A building that sat abandoned for years. Ignored. Forgotten. Falling apart. We're fixing it. The announcement triggered immediate applause. The old biker continued. The building would become a community center, a veterans resource center, a training facility, a place where young people could learn skills, a place where older people could share knowledge, a place where nobody would be forgotten. The crowd loved it. Because Red Mesa needed something positive, needed something hopeful, needed something lasting. The project represented all three. And suddenly the wallet story became something larger, much larger. It became a story about community. The following months transformed the town. The legal investigations continued. The Veterans Center reopened. Scholarships expanded. New programs launched. Volunteers appeared everywhere. Momentum created momentum. Good things started happening. One after another. Diego began preparing for engineering school. The teenager still worked hard. Still helped Rosa. Still rode the same bicycle. But now the future looked different. Not guaranteed. Not easy. Just possible. Sometimes that's enough. 1 year later, the Desert Memorial Ride stretched across miles of open highway. Hundreds of motorcycles crossed the sunset landscape. The sky burned orange and gold. The air felt warm, peaceful, hopeful. The restored Veterans Center stood proudly near town. Children attended workshops there. Veterans mentored students. Families gathered there. The building lived again, exactly as intended. Diego stood outside watching riders arrive. Engineering textbooks sat inside his truck. His first year of college had gone well. Very well. The future that once seemed impossible now felt real. All because of one decision. One wallet. One moment. Bulldog pulled alongside him on a Harley. The old biker removed his sunglasses. Smiled. You doing all right? The question made Diego laugh. The same question Bulldog asked countless times. The same question that started a friendship. The teenager looked across the desert. Toward the motorcycles. Toward the Veterans Center. Toward Rosa talking with friends nearby. Toward the future. Yeah. He smiled. I'm doing all right. The old biker nodded. Satisfied. Because sometimes the most valuable thing a person returns isn't a wallet. It's faith. Faith that honesty still matters. Faith that communities still care. Faith that doing the right thing can change a life. And as the motorcycles disappeared into the sunset beyond Red Mesa, everyone present understood something important. The wallet was never the real story. The choice was.